I talked way too much last week, so I don't know. You want to start with Ahsoka, and I'll let you lead a little since you just finished it.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Even though I might not watch everything, I still share things on my wall because I just like to, just see things. And I remember sharing this post about how, Ahsoka was terrible and the finale sucked, and like everyone in my feed was like, yeah, homeboy's tripping. Like what was your problem, right? So I finished it. And yeah, homeboy's tripping. Like, I'm just like, what is wrong with you, dude? Like, just go away. Like, I was very happy with it because, again, and I think this is important. Like, I didn't finish. I mean, I have not watched Clone Wars. I have not watched a single episode of Rebels, but I can still appreciate the fact that for those who have, that series was like a total, yeah, fuck it. I'll say it. Fan service, man. Like I think it would be. It's like, oh my God, you just like even down to the reunion of Ezra and Bam Bam or whatever that robot's name is. Like, what's the robot's name? Jumper.
no, now that you've said it,
We'll call it
God
Bam Bam
damn it,
now. You could add one of those scrolling captions.
damn it.
So
Yeah, I'm gonna
anyway,
have to throw that in there because I
Basher,
love
Trasher.
no, no, fuck.
Anyway, but it
You
was
keep saying
good.
the wrong thing, you keep missing it. But yeah, he's awesome. Actually, I love the droid.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, he's great. Yeah, the whole thing and like um I I'm a part of me. The only disappointment that I have is that they actually that and I guess we'll spoil this if anybody hasn't watched the end of Ahsoka by now. Um, but I kind of wish that Thrawn hadn't got away. I kind of wish this whole story just kind of took place in the other universe. Um, because like I don't know of any Star Wars lore that includes Thrawn in the bigger picture. And I know there's a bunch of time, but we watched The Force Awakens, and you're talking about how the Jedi are gone, and now you just spent all this time talking about Ahsoka. She just changed Sabine, so Sabine is now waking up as a Jedi, which is a whole thing too. There's a whole thing online about her. Um, and now Ezra's back, and he's a Jedi, and he's a strong Jedi. So like I don't quite understand how nobody believes in the Jedi if there are as many of them. Which I mean, I'm saying that there's what four because Luke isn't even a Jedi yet, right? So maybe there's three, and two of them are off in another universe right now or another galaxy right now. So, I mean, when you think about the span of however many planets in the galaxy, if there's only one Jedi, I can see, I guess, how people wouldn't know that the Jedi are still around. But um, Thrawn's the bigger one. Like he just came back. He's gonna go get the Night Sisters. He went back to their planet. Um, and he's doing all this stuff, and it doesn't really line up with what we know in Star Wars so far. Because I feel like we would have heard more about Thrawn and this whole trying to revive the Emperor thing too, right?
Mhm.
And if you just stayed in the other universe, you could build, or the other galaxy, you could build as many stories as you want there, and without interfering with what we're doing here. But I mean, it's a piddly complaint. They can patch up any hole they need to. So I'm not too worried about that, but um, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
tend to trust Filoni at this point, and I also read online somewhere that this could then give us a chance to see more badass Luke, and maybe Luke is the person who handles Thrawn in like the Prime Galaxy.
I think
If
he's
you
too
want to call
young. I think he's. Oh no, 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 no. I'm thinking of the wrong generation. So he's already. This is already post.
he's just post Death Star man. He's already
Yeah,
taken care
yeah,
of the Emperor. So
yeah.
I feel like he's like king shit right now
That's
as
right.
far as like,
Because there's some drama around whether um whether Hera's son, no, not Hera's son, yeah, Hera's son, because he's force sensitive. There's people talking about, oh, is he one of the ones that Kylo killed in the in Luke's academy, right?
yeah,
Um, and it's interesting because that would be a dark ass story. That would definitely take Hera's story somewhere where that I don't know that they would go. They may just leave that obscure just for the sake of leaving it obscure, unless they do want to write him as somebody more powerful than he is. Um, Maybe even a Knight of Ren. That'd be dope too.
that would be dope. I just feel like I just feel like this and Andor feel more like authentic, like straight up, this is adding to the canon Star Wars, and there's a difference between adding to the canon and living off the canon. Like I
Yeah.
think that for example, Obi-Wan, for as dope as it was kind of like living off the canon, not adding to it. And that's why like I liked like that bond between the Padawan and the Master. I think that was a huge theme of this. Baylan Skoll, like, yeah,
Oh,
totally get
Leave
Saber Kingdom
Schreiber.
in there. Yes, dude, let's get Leave Schreiber in there and keep it going, dude.
Yeah, that story. I mean, his passing away sucks because that story. I mean, just it sucks because it sucks, right? Like Ray Stevenson's awesome, but where they were going with the story, they weren't prepared for him to pass away. They finished filming with the expectation, obviously, that he would be back, and so they do have to deal with that somehow, and they set him up in a pretty significant way. So, those statues that he were on are from the Clone Wars, and that's the mother, the father, and the daughter. I think the mother. No, the shit. I can't remember what they are, but there's three significant characters in like the founding of the Force, basically. And so, now when he's looking off in the distance at the very end, he sees that light off in the distance, and there's a potentially a temple or something that's going to have to go to. So there's a lot of story there that they can just go wild with. Um, and the bummer is that he's not there.
Yeah.
So, like that, I love that meme, and it probably won't be Liev Schreiber. I mean, let's be honest, it if they do, it'll almost feel a little like fan service, but he's got the
They should.
voice and he's got the look. You put a beard on him, and man, does he look
No,
close.
he's imposing. I mean, the thing
Yeah,
is, that's why I
he's a
liked the
big guy
first
too.
So
Yeah,
he legitimately, like, I could see him fucking up Wolverine. So I was like, it was good casting.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, if they do get him, I think it's brilliant. I think
Yes.
whoever came up with that, but now I don't know. Maybe he's got too much leverage now. He's like, everybody wants me for the part. Make sure you pay the living hell out of me. Um, so yeah, we'll see. It doesn't even matter right now. Nothing's going to film until the actor strike's over, anyways. But I would like to see him, or just it doesn't have to be him. It could be anybody. Like they can pick the right guy. I trust them to find the right person. But that story has to continue, and it sucks because to a degree it's going to feel a little like disrespecting somebody that passed away, because he was so good. But I think you have to,
You have to.
in this case, and it's a bummer. But yeah, like I said, I think you have to. Um, so we'll see on that one. But yeah, there's backstory there. There's some interesting, like deeper lore there, and for um, there's gonna be battles there, because even if he doesn't go like hardcore into being the bad guy in the next season, I'm almost just curious to see what his story is like, because he never felt like the big bad, even though he was working for the bad guys. Like his little sidekick Padawan thing, she was more menacing than he was, or because she's crazy. Like he respected the Jedi, and he was a mercenary. So he's like, if you're gonna pay me, I'm gonna go do this job. Like I might not like it, but I'll do it.
Yeah.
And now he's out there on his own, and I think he's off on his own mission. So I'm curious to see like that story unfold, because it's not necessarily going to be him versus Ahsoka or him versus Sabine. I think his little sidekick, whose name I keep forgetting,
Same.
it's like Shin something or other or something
I
like
think it
that.
is Shin. It's Shin. You're
Yeah.
right.
Um, I think she is more going to be their adversary because she has a little bit of an army already. They kind of showed that at the end too. Um, but she's an interesting one too, because maybe, I mean, maybe they can turn her, to their side by the time they have to go back after Thrawn. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
she did seem like, yeah, she seemed a little conflicted. And then when Ahsoka's like, hey, I can help you. And she's like, yeah, ran.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be good. And I like Chopper. Chopper is the droid's name. Fuck.
You did it.
Yeah.
You did
I'm
it.
so proud of myself. Um Chopper is hilarious. Like if you watch Rebels, Chopper's so fucking funny because he is a cranky ass droid, and
Uh-huh.
he will shoot a bitch. He does not care. Um and like I think he legitimately has a kill count of his own. Um and so he's great. And then see Hera and Ezra together will be interesting because that sort of gives Ezra a potential Padawan with Hera's son. Um, so I mean, there's a lot to tell. I don't even think they've announced a
And
season
they
two
could,
yet,
yeah, and they could actually realize they could actually do like tell like the story from two places, which I think is good. I think it's good when you have a story where you are jumping from place to place in terms of what's happening in the action.
or if they're not in a rush, you can do Ahsoka and you can do Ezra. You can do two different shows
Oh, yeah.
altogether. I don't know that they're planning on that, and I haven't heard anything about that or seen anything about that. But you could do two different shows
You could.
and tell the stories, separately if you really wanted to. I would like to see more of the kid that they cast as Ezra. I think
Yeah, he's
he feels like
good.
a good casting.
Yeah,
Um,
I like
and to
him.
be fair, I don't think there was a bad casting in that whole show.
Agreed.
Um, what's her name? Inosanto. I forget her
Yeah,
first
Morgan
name.
Elspeth.
Yeah,
She sure, dude. I like that she went out like a G. Like she fought
yeah,
like those combat scenes and the whole like. I'm like, this is Halloween. Like the zombie clone
yeah,
like that was cool. But even that witch stuff, like it's crazy. I'm like, I'm 46 years old. Okay, but I was kind of creeped out by their shit. So
yeah,
imagine a kid. If I was a kid, I'd be like, I don't like this, mommy. Like I'm just
yeah,
like, this isn't cool. Like they're all like, like chanting and stuff, and like turning her to a sister and like glowing eyes. Like what
yeah,
are you
yeah. It
doing?
was it was dope. Well, and this was the first. This was the first one where I really felt like Rosario Dawson
Yeah.
was fighting legit. Like when I watched some of the earlier ones, her 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 battles felt choreographed, and I know obviously they all are, but her, like, if you watched even um what's his face, the Anakin, if you watched Anakin go, uh he's going hardcore, like he's got this shit down. And his stuff doesn't feel quite as, it's just a little slower for Rosario Dawson. Like she's not a fighter in the same way that Anakin was. And so um Hayden Christensen, that's what I'm trying to say. And so there were definitely fights that she was in early on in the season where I was like, it just doesn't feel like a fight. It feels like a choreographed dance almost. Um, and the last one, she really, it started to feel like legit. So hopefully, if they come back, they train her a little harder. Just I'm nitpicking, like she wasn't bad. It just, like I said, it felt like a choreographed dance more than a fight in a lot of places.
Sure. Yeah. But overall, like I said, like you know, I'll see if I ever get the time. But like this makes me want to. I keep saying it, but like this makes me want to go back. But I'm so behind. Like I haven't seen like The Bear. I haven't seen like there's just so much I haven't seen, and it's just getting worse. Like life is getting, at least on my end, like and I'm like no attention span to save my life. But no, I think this was actually, yeah, it's crazy how Star Wars has kind of come back. Like I think that at least series wise, I haven't been let down. Like there has been no like, sorry She-Hulk, but there has been no like She-Hulks in the Star Wars pantheon. It's
Yeah.
been solid.
Boba Fett's the closest. I think that
Yes.
series was only okay. It had its moments, but the best parts of it didn't involve him.
Did you
Um,
finish Mandalorian season 3? Because I actually never even
yes.
got to that. How was it
Yeah.
good?
Yeah, it was solid. It
Yeah.
was really solid. Sets up a lot more. There's definitely some questions about what's going to happen going forward with that show. Um, and I don't want to say anything if you haven't seen the articles, but there's definitely questions about what the Mandalorian means in a season 4. Um, and so it's interesting. So I definitely say finish watching it. Um, but yeah, it's solid. It's solid. I think the earlier seasons were probably a little bit better. But what I did like about it is kind of what I liked about this one and Andor, in that they're all different. Like the way they're telling their story is all different. Like Andor was long and slow moving and intelligent. It was almost like an A24 Star Wars movie, right? Like it was pretty, and it was telling the story, and it was building your characters, and it was moving along at a slower pace, but letting you kind of really take everything in. And the Mandalorian was a Western. Shoot first, ask questions later. Protect your lone wolf and cub kind of thing, and do all that shit. And this one was at least initially closer to like the samurai kind of idea, where she's out there fighting, hand to hand sword, lightsabers, but and really on a mission to find this guy that she needs to stop.
It was all about, yeah, yeah, and for me, and just bonds and
Mm-hmm.
love, like, and not like romantic love, but just
No,
like,
no,
yeah, but it was just about bonds, like the bonds between her, like, Padawan and Master, and then of course Ezra, and her and Anakin. Like that was like, I think that
yeah,
was a
that was
pivotal moment
big.
for her.
That was big, and that whole episode was so good.
Yeah,
And like people said, I mean,
that scene.
that was probably the best shot, the best scene, I think, in Star Wars anywhere. I mean, it's up there with Vader in the hallway in Rogue One. It's just that thing that because of everything else that came before it makes it work so well.
Sorry, you know what's funny? Like it's all my favorite like goosebump inducing scenes involve Vader, because my other favorite scene is in Empire Strikes Back when Luke and Vader are finally facing each other on that platform, and it's kind of
Yeah.
like the steam's rising and you see like the
Yeah.
lights. Like
Yep.
that scene, I actually have that as one of my like Facebook backgrounds, like because it's just so, it's like finally like they're facing each other for the first time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That one's awesome. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is like Vader was always the bad guy. Like he was always as bad as it gets. And so I think he's always been, but he was cool. Like every kid, you know, didn't understand that. Of course, he was obviously a psychopathic murderer. But dude, somehow he was so cool. Like he was big, and everybody was afraid of him. Like
his
because
voice was dope.
because if you think about it, in the original series, in the original 3 films, everybody knows that he's a badass, but he doesn't throw down very often.
No.
Like he force chokes a couple of dick holes in the conference room, and then
And then four strokes the guy Nita, I think, whatever, across like the screen. That to me is one of the
yeah,
funniest episode like scenes ever. Like he's just like,
yeah,
you
and then
know,
he's like, "You're in charge now," and
yes.
you're like, "Oh," and that dude's like, "Oh fuck," like, but like other than that, like he didn't, he fights Obi-Wan and kills Obi-Wan, and then he fights Luke, then he fights Luke again, and but he doesn't do much, and he's still like the baddest dude in town. And so, when you see him in the hallway scene, it's in Rogue
Rogue One.
One, you're like, oh, this dude is badass. Because he like that's really the first time you see Darth Vader go and fuck shit up. Now, if you've watched Clone Wars, if you watched the other stuff, you've seen Anakin get out there and do his thing. If you've watched the prequels, you've seen Anakin get out and do his thing, but you never see Vader. And it kind of, you have to go to the comics, or you have to go to the old books that aren't canon anymore, to understand how bad Vader was. Like, he killed everyone. You get it in was it Revenge of the Sith,
Yeah.
um, where he kills all the kids. Like, then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, he bad, you know. Um, but yeah, it's he always was more of an icon than anything else, and it worked kind of the opposite of the way for me that it was with Boba Fett. Like, Boba Fett, everybody was like, Boba Fett's so badass, and I was like, he didn't do anything. Like, all he did was talk about how great he was, and then he got his ass thrown into a pit and he lost. Like,
And screamed
and yeah,
while at it. Yeah.
yeah, and and but Vader was legit. So to build up to that scene in Ahsoka, where you got all of that, you got all of the Vader and Anakin bits that Ahsoka had to deal with, because she was dealing with it for her. It wasn't about him at all. It was about her take on it all, and what it all meant. And I thought it was dope. Like, that whole episode was pretty awesome.
Last thing I'll say, because I know we're totally nerding on this, is like,
I know.
yeah, Anakin, even when he was kind of trying to help her, but he's like, okay, well then you'll die, and he just starts like fighting her. I was actually kind of scared for her because
Yeah,
he's still that's a Force ghost and he's been redeemed, but that's still Anakin. Like, he might actually
yeah,
like really wreck your shit. Like, I don't know, like he's just
yeah.
thinking about him, dude.
Well,
So yeah,
it's sort of like it was. You can give up and you can just die. Like,
yes,
you can do that, and
I will
you know,
help.
I'll,
I'll
I'll,
happily help
I'll
you.
yeah, I'll
Yes.
guide you there, or you can get past this demon that you have, and you come back as Ahsoka the White, right? Like Gandalf the White. Like, she came back
Yes.
all dressed in white and everything. And I think it was cool. Like, that whole episode was cool. So yeah, I'm excited. I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know if there's a season two. Like I said, you
They
could
need
split it
one.
up and do Ahsoka and Ezra,
Just
or
Ezra. Yep.
yeah,
Maybe it's like Ezra, and then there's Sabine. Like, maybe it's like a trilogy.
yeah, totally. And that's the other thing. Like, people were bitching about how Sabine was Mary Sue, and like she didn't earn her
Um,
powers. And I was like, no, dude, she really did. Like,
yeah, she got killed. I mean, basically got killed
yeah,
in the first
like
episode.
Sabine, and she repeatedly struggled to use the Force, and only slowly was able to achieve it. And then once it was unlocked, once she understood it, she's not all powerful. Like, she can't do the shit that Ezra can do. She can't do the shit that Ahsoka can do, but she has enough control of it and understanding and belief in it that she can pitch Ezra across the gap with his help. Right? It's not
Right.
like he was just a dude jumping. He was also using the Force. She was, he almost didn't make it.
Exactly.
There was so she's still got a long way to go. Um, and I didn't feel like she was a Mary Sue at all. I get why people felt that Rey was a Mary Sue. Like, she just kind of was like, cool, I'm unlocking power X now. She was like a video game, right? Like, she's like, I did this thing and now I have more powers than I had before. But I love Rey. Like, I am I am Team Rey. Like, I always liked her in the sequels. But I can, like I said, I can understand the argument there. I don't even understand it with Sabine. I'm like, no,
Um,
she earned it, and she's not a Jedi. She's not a Jedi master.
She's a
She's not going to.
Mandalorian. And
Yeah.
I love the ping, ping, ping off her Beskar. Like, that's
Hmm.
cool. Like, I just like, and she actually switches between gun and saber. And like,
Yeah.
even Ahsoka's like, gun or pistol or whatever she says. Like, and then
Yeah.
she like she's badass. She's
Yeah.
badass. I respect her. You're gonna
Yeah.
hate her because she's a fucking Mary Sue.
And
Sorry.
she's still young. Like, there's so much for her character to learn. Um, and yeah, I think she's great. So I don't anybody that thinks she's Mary Sue
And
can bite ass.
remember, if you watch the show, apparently Mandalore got like destroyed, right? So part of the reason why Ahsoka hesitated to even unlock her shit was because she might like use it for bad. Like so she's a little worried about like Sabine's got
Hmm.
some drive. So no, Sabine is a yeah, she's got
Yeah,
willpower. She's like an Aaron Yeager.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. She's a little angry. She's got a little fire in her belly. Um, cool. So okay, so that's Ahsoka. I'll jump into
Amazing.
a couple of things really quick before we go on and talk about Loki. But I watched um this week. I watched Pearl, which is a prequel to X, the Ti West horror film. Um, and this one is, if you've ever seen X, this one's very different. It's a prequel story about one of the characters that is in X, and it takes place in, I think it must be the 20s because they're driving around in some pretty old cars. Um, and there's her husband is away at war, and I mean, she's crazy. She's a damaged girl living on a farm with her mom and her very sick dad. And her mom is, as most people were around that time, very devoutly religious, right? And she is not okay. Like she's mentally not healthy. Like um I forget, some, I don't know if it's a duck. Something comes into the barn that's not supposed to be in the barn, and she literally stares at it for a minute and then just kills it. And then she takes it out, feeds it to an alligator, which is a big deal because that is the alligator, and the pond that the alligator's in shows up in X. But she's like a sweet girl, but at the same time she's disturbed. Like she's got this psychotic side to her, that she can't really fight, and so it's kind of her unraveling. You have David Cornsweet in it, who is going to be Superman. His part is not huge, but it is important to the film. Her Pearl's husband is away. She's coming to terms with the fact that he may not come back from the war, and so she goes to the movies because she wants to dance. And she may or may not be good. We don't know until she auditions, but she talks about how she wants to audition for this dance thing. And he's really kind to her, and he takes her in, and they sleep together, like they have their thing. And then, of course, he drives her home, and then he sees things around her house that make him very uncomfortable because she's already at this point already done some crazy shit at home. And then she's like, well, what's wrong? What's wrong with me? Why are you being weird? Why are you being, very, very crazy? And so that whole thing breaks down, and then she does the dance audition, and that doesn't work out. And like it's a wild, wild story. I don't want to give too much away, or say too much about it, because where X is dark, like X takes place mostly over the course of an evening. Like the beginning, it starts, they're shooting this porn film in the barn that was Pearl's barn, but you don't know who Pearl is yet. And then that one goes all crazy, but that basically goes nuts over the course of one night. So you have one night, so it's all dark and scary and gritty and weird. This one, for a lot of the film, other than her craziness, and the mom being, very stern and hardcore Catholic as they were, and or probably wasn't even Catholic, it's probably Protestant or something like that. But um, you know, uh, it's very bright, like the colors that takes place during the day. Um, there's the cornfields, there's the grass is green, everything is brighter. The storytelling is a little slower paced because instead they're kind of digging you into her crazy rather than it being an overall situation that is wild. So it's a very different feel than X, but still really good. And I think um, one of the craziest things about it is at the very end when the credits roll, um, they pan in on her face and she's smiling, and instead of doing a freeze frame and just kind of letting it be, maybe she's crazy, maybe she's not, the camera stays on her and that smile for like, dude, it's got to be like a minute or a minute and a half. And this was totally not planned. Like they came up with it like on the kind of on the spot. And for everything that Mia Goth has ever done, this is incredible because the way the shot starts, she might actually be kind of happy, but she goes through all of the emotions while holding this smile for this whole like length of time. And at one point, she's almost crying. Like, dude, it is amazing, and it is like it's what everybody thinks of as the iconic shot from this movie, and it almost didn't even happen. And so it was really cool to see because I think um, I think she's a better actress than people really think about because she's only doing these kind of weird horror films
Mhm.
right now. And it'll be interesting to see if she branches out of that because they're just in that shot. There's so much, like I said, emotion and kind of just ability there as an actor that I think she's got a lot of distance ahead of her. They're doing one more film in the trilogy, so this is going to end up being a trilogy, and the third one's called Maxine.
Mhm.
It might have even come out this year. I can't remember. But it's Maxine with three X's.
Well,
Um,
it's funny because like I mean I know she plays um Pearl in both the movies. So,
mhm.
but both movies take place at drastically different times. So,
Yes.
like, I don't know, like I should probably just watch the movie, but like, is she immortal or some shit? Like, what's going
No,
on?
no, no, no. She's an old woman.
Okay, so she's doing
In
makeup
that film.
then for
Yeah,
the. Okay, got it.
yeah. And then, but she also plays a different character that is related to Pearl, or yeah, that is related to Pearl in the new one. So she also plays a younger character that is very similar to Pearl, um, in X.
Is that
So she can.
Maxine?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
I see her as
Um,
Pearl Maxine in the
okay,
in the
yeah, yeah. So then the I think the Maxine must be the sequel to X. So in chronological order, I think it'll go Pearl X Maxine, and release order it was X Pearl and then Maxine.
Yo, she was in a Nymphomaniac, which I saw. That's a crazy movie.
That's Lars von Trier, right?
Right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And
So
she's with Shia LaBeouf, and he was in that movie. So I wonder if they met on that set.
I'm sure, I'm sure
Actually,
they make.
no. Well, maybe. Actually, keep going.
I was gonna say they would make sense as a couple. He's a little weird himself, which is too bad. I actually love Shia LaBeouf as an actor. As a person, I don't know. There's some debate there whether he's been um, totally great to everybody around him or not. But I've actually always liked him as an actor. He was one of my favorite parts of the Transformers films that he was in. He's got that manic energy that works for his characters when he plays a little silly. I think it works really well for him. I didn't even hate him in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. He was actually one of my favorite parts about that film too. Um, but it just didn't pan out for him in that film because his whole life kind of went sideways, and that film sucked butt. So they were like, "Yeah, we're just gonna pretend that didn't happen." What happened
And
to Mutt? Yeah, he died.
yeah,
Yeah, he's dead.
lost grade.
Yeah. So,
Oh, one more thing.
yeah,
Do you think, in terms of if this is a prequel, would you then recommend seeing Pearl before X, or would you see X first and then go back to Pearl like the way they planned it, like
I'd I
sort of chronological order?
I don't think it matters. I would almost say to watch them in release order though, because I mean, you already know too much about Pearl now just from talking about it. That some of the things that make her more interesting in X might be a little spoiled, but I would still say watch them in release order. I think it's fine. Um, and they're good. They're weird. They're weird. They definitely have a feel to them. Um, but also they're two very, like I said, they're very different movies. It's interesting to see a director do two films that are so vastly different. It impressed me a lot, actually. It made me like the film a lot more. Um,
Nice.
so then let's see what else. Oh, today, just tonight, I watched the 2011 version of The Thing, which is technically a prequel to the 1982, 1983, whatever it is, original
Nice.
Thing movie.
So it's Norwegian. Or the
It is,
Norwegian
there are
too?
Norwegians there.
Yes, okay.
They kind of, it's a blend. So it is a prequel, but it also like they take elements from the original and just kind of use them, which I think was probably what people didn't like about it. Like if you look at the Rotten Tomatoes score, it's not very good. It's in like the 30s.
Ooh.
I think it was better than that, but definitely like it should have been its own movie. Like they should have done their own things with it. I think it was like this amalgamation where they tried to make it a prequel, but they also tried to make it more like the 1950s film, but take things from the 1980s film, and it just didn't kind of have its own identity. Um, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is the main character. Um, and it's weird because you never see a female on the base in,
The
when they go
original
back to the
movie.
base in the original. Um, but there were definitely things that happened in this one that you're like, oh, that they saw that when they went back to the Norwegian base in the original. They saw that when they went back to the Norwegian base in the original. So there's these things that do line up, but then there were other things they did. They're like, oh, well, we should test the blood. Like they had the same ideas that the other team had, kind of in the same way. And I think it just needed its own identity to be better. The acting in it was fine. But like I said, at one point somebody gets stuck outside and then comes back in. Is he the thing? Is he not the thing? Like so much of it is the same thing that it doesn't quite have its own identity, but it does. So it ends, and you're like, oh, I guess that's where it ends. And then as the credits start to roll, dude shows up at, in a helicopter that is the helicopter from the opening of the original, and then a wolf dog comes jumping out of the building and runs off, and so they get into the helicopter to chase. So it starts to set up the next one. Um, Definitely. I mean, the CGI work isn't bad on this one, but I would say I liked the practical effects of the original The Thing more than the CGI effects of this one. Um, there's just something really special about great practical effects that holds up better than CGI. Even though I mean 2011 isn't that long ago, and our CGI was pretty solid back then. So it's not bad necessarily by any stretch, but the practical effects of the original were just better. Um, but like I said, it was fine. I think if you watch, I would kind of like Pearl and X. I would say watch the original first, watch the
Yeah.
1982, and then watch this one. Um, and like I said, the bummer is that it didn't have its identity, but it was okay. Was solid. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is solid. Kind of leaves you as on a cliffhanger with her story because um, she's alive at the end, but then it jumps to the credits when this dude lands in a helicopter and another dude is there, but she is not there. So we don't know if she got away. We don't know if she goes and tells like somebody else's story. Like I don't know if there was originally a plan to do a post the Thing sequel, um, because that was always the mystery of the Thing too. Was one of the two people left at the end of the Thing, were either of them a thing? And and I guess I just read an article like yesterday where somebody, I guess it was the effects guy, I think it is, for a long time said, oh well, if you watch the films, there's a reflection in the eyes of everybody that is infected by the Thing, so you can tell at the end, if you see the reflection in the eyes of one of the characters, they're the Thing at the end of the movie. And I just read yesterday, uh, John Carpenter was literally like, he has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. He's like, I'm the only one that knows, and I will never tell. Like, so I was like, okay, all right, cool. So I thought that was kind of funny to see, but that does bring me, out of the Thing to John Carpenter's Suburban Screams, which is airing on Peacock right now. And um, I will just be perfectly honest. I thought it would be more interesting because it's John Carpenter, and I am very bored with it, and I probably won't finish it. So the idea behind it plays out like um, almost like an Unsolved Mysteries. So if you've ever seen Unsolved Mysteries, they interview the people, they reenact the scenes, they go through this, and to be fair, these stories in Suburban Screams are true. So they're people's real experiences, but at the end of the day, they don't. Only one of them felt supernatural enough to be like truly scary. Otherwise, they just felt like they belonged on Unsolved Mysteries. But also they weren't really a mystery to solve. Like it was just like weird shit happened, and then whatever. Like one of them was literally a dude did a Ouija board. They contacted a spirit. He felt like a spirit was following him around. He found out she was murdered, and he found out where she was murdered and sent her over to the other side, and convinced her that she was actually dead. And that's what the whole thing was. And it was fine, but it wasn't that interesting. And there was one about, I don't know where it was, this urban legend called the Bunny Man, which they definitely, when they costumed him up, looked creepy as shit, but the story was only okay. Like it just, like if you're really into documentaries and into documentaries about weird shit, give it a shot. It just didn't land for me. I didn't think it wasn't what I was hoping for. Like I was hoping for something that was going to be genuinely creepy, and I didn't get that from most of it. Maybe it's because I don't know, maybe the reenactments weren't good enough, or the interviewees weren't very interesting, like when they were telling their stories. I don't know what it was. It just so I probably won't finish it, but that's that. So there's two other big things out right now, but I've rambled for long enough. So Loki is out right now. That is on its second episode. Full disclosure, I have not watched episode 2, but I watched episode 1. You have watched episode 2. So what do you think of of Loki so far?
So believe it or not, like, so one of my friends hit me up in my inbox and was like, have you watched Loki yet? And I'm like, no, but I will. And they were like, well, I don't like it. They're like, I have no idea what's going on, and Generation V is way better, And then I just went into my own like theory, of course, which is that, well, I think ever since like Marvel exploded, like Kevin Feige can't quality control everything, and that's why. And this might be another example. Now that's me setting the stage for my reception of Loki, and maybe it's psychological because I was told it was bad. I watched the show and I don't hate it. Like
Yeah.
I'm just more like I just want to see what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at, and so for me, and I did have to kind of go back and like reread some stuff, like who is Renslayer again? Like, just kind of like jogging my memory. But yeah, I just want to see where this goes, I don't hate it. And it's interesting to see how far as a character, a Loki Lofison or whatever his last name is, or something like that, like has come, because at one point there he does make a reference to, himself from the Avengers, which I thought was pretty cool. So no, I think it's too early, I think, to tell whether or not the show is good or bad, personally. But I do think it's timey-wimey and confusing, and I'm still not really sure like what Sylvie. Well, I know what she did. I mean, she basically, because she killed him because he was the real TVA.
Yeah.
Now the Prime Universe can't stay. There's branches coming off. But the thing is, like, these branches, I mean, are they really dangerous? Because I think by episode 2, and you'll see, I think the question becomes, are these really bad things, or should we be pruning them? Like, should we be pruning them? I think that's kind of like where it goes. And I kind of, yeah, I don't know. But the reason why they want to prune them is because apparently that's going to allow what's his name, Kang,
Okay.
to proliferate, and and that's the reason why we got to keep it one timeline. So,
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I think the first one, I saw it a lot. I can't remember his full name, but the dude from Indiana Jones.
Kei Kwan, I
Yeah,
think.
that was
I think
I thought
so.
it was just last name, but yeah, he's great. He's fantastic. I mean, he's
Yes.
very much just data
Eve.
and
Yes.
but it works for him.
Yes.
He's so much fun. Um, and I really like him. I think I hope he shows up more in the second episode.
Oh, you're
Um,
good. Yeah.
okay, good.
He's
Because he's a scene stealer. Like I think he is actually making the show right now.
yes.
But and maybe it's to the overall storytelling detriment because I think um we kind of need to know what's going on with Loki and Mobius, and he's so fun that he almost gets in the way of that storytelling a little bit. But I have a little faith in this one. I feel better about this. And to be fair, I like the first Loki. Um, but my family and I just finished watching Endgame, Infinity War and Endgame. And you watch those and you're just like, I don't understand. Like, it's not fair. It's not fair that they have to try and restart everything after this because everything is judged against that. It's hard to make new stuff after they came out because when it came out, everybody's like, okay, cool. Now they can do something different. And then they did um WandaVision, which took everybody a little bit. Like because it was super different. Um, but then everybody fell in love with it. And then everything kind of settled into more normal. And people didn't like a lot of the stuff that came out after that. And then finally we got Guardians 3, which was the big, like emotional, like tent pole film for its franchise. And like that felt it wasn't Endgame, but it was up in that
And No Way Home,
kind
I
of up
think, is
there.
also, I think we can't
Fair,
forget that
yeah.
one. That
And,
was
and and those worked and those closed out these franchises, but none of the things that were starting new ones, even the Eternals, like the Eternals, everybody wanted something different. And so they got the Eternals and everybody's like, well, that sucked because it wasn't like everything else. And we're like, you said you wanted something new. You got what you asked for, and then you complain that it wasn't like the other stuff. Um, it's such a weird place right now. And then I thought it was crazy too to see the quote from Kevin Feige that just came out in the last couple of days where he said, he's like, oh, we're only scratching the surface of what the MCU can be. And I'm like, that's cool because you do have, I mean, there is a fuck ton of stories you can tell. You haven't even got to the X-Men, you haven't even got to these other things. But at the same time, like you need to get your house in order before it's too late to get to those things.
Did you see the article about how he saw, like, I think the first like 6 episodes or a couple episodes, I think it was 6 though, of fucking
Daredevil.
yeah, and then he just quietly fired the writers and they're just doing it all over again. Like,
Well, that one's interesting too because that some of the things that are going on behind the scenes that people are saying is future shows getting a hack job and being changed up in a certain way um, are not necessarily because Disney feels like they need to innovate their shows or to change the way their shows are running. It's because they don't have a choice. The WGA, there's a certain number of writers that have to be in every room. And if you're going to write a show with a certain number of episodes, you have to have a showrunner. You have to have a certain number of writers. And there's certain now requirements that you have to have to meet the standards of the WGA. So some of those things that are coming out where they're like, oh, they're going to start writing this with a plan and doing X, Y, and Z. Well, they don't have a choice. That's not Disney or Feige being brilliant and saying, oh, we saw that people didn't love She-Hulk, so we're gonna, do this thing. They literally don't have a choice. They signed the paperwork that said this is what we're gonna do. So you have to have a showrunner. you have to have a certain number of writers in the room, and they have to be working at all times. So
So
it's
the strike caused the show to be
it,
scrapped and taken out.
Daredevil's a little different. Like Daredevil, I mean, they may have decided they need to go back and redo some of it. Um, but when they talk about how they're now, if they're redoing it, how they're going to have to, hire new people and do all this, that part
Is
is
Van
because of the WGA. So
right?
he may not have loved the episodes. So there's two different sides to this story that everybody's bumping together as one. If he didn't
Fair.
like it and said we need to refilm it, cool. But then if he says now we have to go out and hire a showrunner and X number of writers, that's because they actually have to.
No,
So
okay, I
there,
get that. I get
so
that.
there's kind of two sides to that story that are getting blended into one, and it's making it sound like Disney is, like I said, being super brilliant about this, or has this
Yeah,
new way
I
of
wouldn't even
thinking.
say brilliant. For me, it's just more of like, just as someone who is, like I can just say, like, I definitely have navigated corporate America. I wasn't always the corporate America like expert at all. Like, I think I learned late, but I now know how to play the game. And I think the way I, again, this is speculation. I wasn't there, but I imagine early MCU until about 2013 or ish or 2014, Feige was basically having to butt heads with Ike Perlmutter because he was the
Yeah,
president of
yeah,
Marvel Entertainment. Once Disney bought Marvel, then he got rid of Ike, and then Feige had more control. And this is where the golden age started. So we're talking Winter Soldier, we're talking all the way up to like Infinity War and Endgame. But then once it got so big, then it was almost like, okay, we got to please the shareholders. So Feige, you now have less control again. We're just going to do all this shit. You can't control it, and you can't be a dictator. So we're going to let Victoria and whoever else like run some shit. And then you've got episodes where Feige is a fucking computer or a robot hanging from a ceiling, you know? So to me, it's like Marvel had to like fail. You had to sit there and watch your baby that you nurtured fail because they took it out of your control. And now they're like, okay, I mean, guys, this is not me being egotistical. I'm telling you, I need to be in control. I'm not being a control freak. It's just look at what happened. Look at what happened. But I had to let it happen so that like you have to give people like no rope to hang themselves. So yeah,
yeah.
you board people and you bean counters like Chapek, okay, Chapek who insisted on releasing Black Widow on streaming versus on the films, and Feige said no, and Chapek said I don't care, Feige, I'm CEO, I'm bean counter, I'm suit, and making dumbass decisions. So anyway, that's what I think has happened, and I hope Feige can right the ship because yeah, the Marvel brand has taken a hit. And I think that people just don't give shit anymore. Not really. I mean, it's not the same.
Yeah, and it's tricky because they finally got past some of this stuff, but you still can't have any of your actors promote their material because the actors are on strike. So
Marvel
we're
is in trouble.
we're 3 weeks away from the Marvels dropping, and none of the actors can go out and talk about it. So like we're still in a position because there was this thing about how Disney was surprised that a bunch of their movies didn't work out in the last year. And I was like, dude, you sucked at promoting them. Like you can't complain about how um what is it, the not the Eternals, it's called the Elemental, about how Elemental performed when nobody fucking knew it was coming out. Like you didn't have any commercials. The marketing for that film was garbage, absolute garbage, and everybody that I know that watched it said, oh, it's okay, it was not that bad. Like if it had been marketed well, it would have done better.
Book even or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. And so it was just there's so much shit marketing out there. And then you've got DC pumping all of the marketing money into the Flash because they have to, but that had so much bad PR behind it already that I don't think there's any saving that. Um,
Did you see Blue Beetle yet?
no, I still haven't seen that one yet.
I feel so bad for them. And again, I actually I'll say on the show, like I know people who watched it and they're actually like, yeah, it sucked. I'm like, you know what? I think you're just saying it sucked because everyone else said it sucked. Fuck you.
Yeah.
No, seriously, like it wasn't that bad, dude. It
Well,
wasn't. It didn't deserve to do worse than Shazam 2. Sorry.
yeah, Shazam 2 was a garbage film. That was not good. But now there's this whole thing about Warner might sell
Yeah.
DC, fucking
I
DC.
hope.
And so then they're like, well, is Gunn actually going to have the control that they thought he was going to have? And I'm like, dude, I was like, whoever buys it has to be smart enough to buy it and
Disney,
still give him that control.
Disney, Disney, please buy it.
Dude, that
Buy
would be insane. I don't know
antitrust,
if
I know.
Disney can. Yeah, exactly.
But
They,
still, do it. Do it. Do it.
the other one that would be interesting is Apple. There's some because Apple wants to get into more of that stuff, and so
Okay with that. After
there's the
Empire, Godzilla,
oh
I'm in.
yeah, yeah. I would be
Honor. Yeah.
very curious to see how that would go. But whoever buys it, if it does get sold, I really hope they leave the reins in Gunn's hands. I think that was a good hiring. If you go back and watch the Guardians trilogy as a whole, um, is a great trilogy. He's got a great grasp of his characters. If you watch Peacemaker, that's a show that should have been stupid and should not have worked. And it was really good. Like I really enjoyed Peacemaker. His Suicide Squad took a movie that sucked and a bunch of the characters from it and a premise that everybody was like, nah, fuck this, we don't care, and made a pretty okay movie, all considering. Um, his new DCU is going to have a different feel than that, but like I think if you buy them, I really hope whoever buys DC, if it happens, um, buys with the understanding that this is like part of the product, right? Like James Gunn at this point is part of the product, and they should stick with that. Um, because I think he may or may not be Feige level, but like he's got a sense about him that he knows what he wants to do.
He's growing. I
Yeah,
see someone who is growth minded.
yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah.
All right.
Put it up.
So yeah. So the last thing I've got, since that was Loki, the last thing I've got is nope, the Fall of the House of Usher, which released on Thursday. I don't know why they didn't wait till Friday and drop it on Friday the 13th. They dropped it on October 12th, which is great. I finished it on Friday the 13th. I watched all 8 episodes in what amounts to a 24-hour period. Um, but it is peak Mike Flanagan. If you've seen Midnight Mass, if you've seen Haunting of Hill House, if you've seen Bly Manor, um, this is right there with them. I mean, this one is definitely a more modern story. It's really interesting the way that he takes this larger story about a family. Um, the way that it opens is you have the actor whose name I'm completely escaping me, but the father, um, and his sister is played by Mary from Battlestar Galactica. Mary,
Oh, the governor or whatever, or the
yeah,
president.
yeah,
Rosalind.
yeah. She plays his sister, and they are
Bruce Greenwood.
Okay, yeah, Bruce Greenwood's the main guy.
Mike.
Um, and then you got
Mary
her,
McDonald.
Mary McDonald. There you go. And they are the heads of this massive pharmaceutical company, which is interesting too because they do take their shot at pharmaceuticals as an industry kind of without taking a huge shot. Like they just kind of sort of take a dig at the opioid industry
Mhm.
overall. Like that's kind of how what they've built their company around. Um, and the way that it opens up is I think it opens up at the funeral or early on for the last three of his six children. So all of his kids have died in a very short period of time. And so the story begins with him sitting down and talking to this guy. I guess he's from the not the FCC. What is the one for financial? Um,
FTC. Yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
yeah. I think he's an investigator for the FTC or the FBI or somewhere in there. But um, his name is Augie. He's played by damn it, I'll forget his name too, but does a great job. And because this jumps back and forth through time, the guy that they cast to play his younger self too is fantastic. But he sits down in this battered old house, which is the house um, that old man Usher grew up in when he was young and poor. And he is basically saying, "Look, he's like, you've been investigating me for my whole career, and you've never been able to prove anything." He's like, "I'm going to tell you everything." He's like, "I'll tell you basically where the bodies are buried." He's like, "Everything we've ever done wrong." He's like, "By the time we're done, you'll have me on at least one count of murder." He's like, you'll have everything, but you have to let me tell my story. And so this is how it starts to unfold. And he's there's a point early on in the story when it takes place in 1980 when him and his sister effectively find a way to take over this big pharmaceutical company and take it to where it is. And so they've been successful. And I don't want to give anything away because there's so many just great twists and turns, but the way the story is told, it goes through the deaths of each one of his kids, and how they died and what craziness is there. And the longer it goes on, the more um, what's her name here starts to take over. Carla Gugino's character starts to come into play. She's fantastic. I, what I love about Mike Flanagan is he uses the same people over and over and over again, and in such different ways. The guy that played that played the dad in the kid from E.T. and he played the dad in The Haunting of Hill House.
Mm-hmm.
So different in this. So different in this. His wife,
Very
Kate
common.
Siegel,
Mm-hmm.
is gorgeous. Number one, I think she's beautiful.
Yes, she is.
She's been doing his work for a while, and she is very different in this one than she's been. Carla Gugino is very different, and she's obviously gorgeous. Mark Hamill is great.
Yeah.
His whole run is really fantastic. Um, he's definitely doing some character like work, like his voice is different. He definitely sounds, a little more grizzled and all that, but he's fantastic. Um, it's a damn good show, and I think if you like the other Flanagan shows, this is the last one for Netflix. His new contract is going to be over at Prime, I think is where it's going to be, but he went out with a bang. I think I still liked Midnight Mass more. Um, but this is probably my second, and I love Hill House, so that's saying something.
Yeah.
But I've seen a few people put this one at the top, and I can't really argue. If you put it at the top of your rankings, it's different. And the way that he does each story is each story or each episode is loosely based on one of Poe's stories. So you have the Pit and the Pendulum. You have, I think the last episode is the Raven. You have the Annabelle Lee, and you've got a couple of the other ones in there. So there's a bunch of stuff in there, but they kind of act like Edgar Allan Poe doesn't necessarily exist in their universe. Like when people recite things that are from Poe's writing, it's not like they're reciting Poe. It's like they're just saying these things, out. And so it's cool. It's a really cool way to tie everything together, tell this bigger story but still tell it using Edgar Allan Poe in such a neat way. And it's dark and it's gritty and it's messy. Jen asked if it was teenager friendly, and after the first episode it is, but when they tell the death of the first son, there's this whole nightclub thing going on. There's a lot of like sex and naked people in that episode, and it's a little obviously not kid friendly. After that, you're probably okay, but it's just good, and the way that it ends, where you get your ending, you're just like, okay, it's a very Flanagan ending, and it's it's a hard stop as far as the story goes. There's a moment in the last episode that is a bit of a heartbreaker, one that really gets you in the feels. and yeah, it's just so good. There's not a mistake in there. Like the dude has done his work, and you can see where his filmmaking career. I think I talked about it last week in the episode I did by myself, but I watched Rose Red and Storm of the Century, which were two Stephen King miniseries back in the late '90s and early 2000s. And you can see how those probably um, affected Mike Flanagan's like filmmaking ideas, because the Hill House films kind of feel very similar to those. And I think Stephen King's been a big influence on Mike Flanagan. He made Gerald's Game. He made Doctor Sleep. He's done a Stephen King turn. So, um, yeah, I'm super curious to see what he does over at Prime.
I did notice the name Samantha Sloyan, and I want to say she
Yes.
was the one who played Bev Keane, who
Oh
was
yeah.
so deliciously hateable
Oh my God.
in
In Midnight Mass.
like Mass, man. Like I mean, basically the characters that really stuck out in Midnight Mass, obviously the priest, but then
Oh yeah.
her,
I wish Hamish was in this. He's not in this.
yeah,
Uh,
and the sheriff guy, I liked him.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, and then of course, like, his wife, Kate Siegel, and then the main character. Or like you know about the guy who's got in the drunk driving accident. But no, so Sloyan was amazing. So was
I didn't
she
recognize her.
okay.
And her character is very interesting. She's one of the kids.
Okay.
Rahul Kohli, he was the sheriff in Midnight Mass. He was one of the kids.
Okay.
So the way it is, he's got two kids that are his children by his original wife. They call the other ones the bastards, because after a while he started just having affairs and having kids. But he says early on, he's like my father didn't acknowledge me. He's like, so for however powerful I got, however, for whatever I had, I wanted to share it with my kids. So he has six kids, and most of them are from different parents. That's why you can have a Rahul Kohli who is brown. You can have what's the other one's name? Um, Shit, I can't remember his name, but he looks maybe like he's Latino. Um, and then the other kids I think they're all whitish, because I mean, dude's white. Bruce Greenwood's a white dude.
Yeah.
But you can kind of cast these other characters in there because he was a promiscuous guy. And yeah, it's just but they're all his kids. So in this one, Kate Siegel is one of the kids. Raul Coley, Sloyan or whatever her last name is, was one of the kids. There was a young one who I don't
Perry,
remember.
Prospero,
Who
Perry Usher,
Prospero. That's who it was. He
Prospero, yeah.
he looked Latino to me.
Yeah.
Um, and then you have the dad from um, Hill House, and there's one more that I'm forgetting. But anyways, yeah. So it's and then you have his granddaughter, and his granddaughter is uh from the Raven. What's the character's name in the Raven? Um, Lenore. So they use her. She is actually Lenore. And so it's just it's so good, and it's dark. Like it's not a happy tale at all. This is really these people, and none of them are good people. Like the only person that you can really watch the whole thing and say this one person is a good person is Lenore, is the granddaughter. Um, like
What's
because
funny,
she no,
sorry.
go ahead.
No, what's funny is Frank Langella was supposed to be playing Bruce Greenwood's
That's
character,
right. That's right.
and he was basically there was a misconduct
Yep.
uh,
Yeah.
allegation.
Yeah. I
So
forgot about that.
crazy.
Yeah. I forgot about he would have been great in the part two, but there's something about the way that Bruce Greenwood did this. Like his voice was perfect for all the voiceover work. Like it was almost like it was meant for him in the first place. Um, it worked out so well. And then, like I said, Mark Hamill for having a smaller part um was great. It's so fun to see like this kind of Flanagan family grow, right? Because most of these people, and even the kid that plays Prospero, was in a different one of his shows. Like almost everybody in this, besides Mary McDonald, I think, has been in one of his projects already. Like he loves to use the same people. Part of me thinks it's a bit of a challenge to him, right? Like he's like, how can I take this person and make them into a different person? And he does it every single time. Um,
I couldn't miss
and
this opportunity. You should have said that Mark Hamill made his mark.
that's a dad joke, dude. That's solid. Uh,
Sorry,
but
I
like
had to.
he had his look about him the whole time. You know, he had his glasses and his hat, and but he was great. He was great as the lawyer. This is a total like lawyer's lawyer. Like the shit that he writes,
Yeah.
the stuff that he writes into the contracts is just brilliant. Like when somebody is like, "Oh well, oh that's who I forgot was he had one more daughter. She was black. She was the one from Bly Manor. That was the groundskeeper kind of in Bly Manor that it turned out was dead the whole time.
Name is Tania Miller. I
Yeah,
was looking it up. I'm just have it all pulled up.
yeah. She was great too. Her storyline was super interesting because when it really kicks off, you feel like maybe she's as good as Lenore. Like maybe she really is like, less of a monster than some of these other kids are. And then you find out, eventually that nope, she's off her rocker too. But
Who
man,
else
it's
did you say? Sorry, I'm so
uh,
sorry.
no,
No,
we
who
say
else did you say? Who else? You said there was two people from Battlestar Galactica. Who was the other person?
yes. Their boss is when they're younger, their boss is played by who's the dude that Starbuck has a thing for when he was the athlete. Um,
Anders.
yes,
And
yeah,
it's funny how I said that because like when I watch a show, I totally identify with motherfuckers. So I was like, I was Apollo. Like I was Apollo in that damn show. So I hated Anders. I'm like, yo, Apollo has been head over heels for you, and you go pick Anders anyway. Are
yeah.
you serious right now? Man, bump you, Starbuck. All
So
right,
yeah,
sorry.
he's the other one, so he's in there too. Um, and he's great. Like he's this, the nasty boss that is running everything. He's a womanizer. Another, I thought I saw that she had played something else in Flanagan, but Willow Holland, if you watched Reacher, she's the girl from Reacher. She plays the young version of Mary McDonald's character. Um, and she's great. Like she always feels like the one that understands everything that's going on. Like, and it turns out at the end that yeah, Bruce Greenwood's character knows exactly what's going on too. But it always feels like she just has a little more control and a little more of a grasp on everything. And it's a trip, and it was just damn good. And like I don't know, maybe it's not for everybody, but I want to say this was up there like a 90% or something on Rotten Tomatoes. I'll look it up for sure and find it and
Yeah,
post it.
it has our yeah, 90%.
Yeah,
Says right here with an average rating of eight out of 10. And that is of course a critic's review.
yeah,
The
yeah.
but yeah,
So it's it's just good. It's just so good, and I think um, there are a few parts that are more horror than other parts, but I would say even if you're not a horror fan, I think you can digest this reasonably and still dig it. Like it's not something where the horror of it is going to stick with you in the way that maybe Hill House would because it was a ghost story, and it makes you think. But the other thing too, this kind of did something that Hill House was notably famous for. Um, is it slips stuff into the background. So things will happen in the background. So you have to watch the whole show. They don't necessarily change the story, but they're cool, like little Easter eggs, and there's things going on in the background. In Hill House, because the original Haunting of Hill House had some crazy number of ghosts, and there's been a bunch of stories or remakes of the Haunting of Hill House. There's so many ghosts in the background of the Haunting of Hill House that if you're not watching, you won't see. But they're there, like way in the background. You can just barely see them. And so that was like Flanagan's nod to the whole history of Hill House. And he snuck little things there in this one too. So it's really neat to see all that stuff. Uh, so yeah, I can't recommend it enough. And if you like Flanagan at all, then you have no business not watching it, because it's pretty damn near perfect Flanagan. Like I said, Midnight Mass is still my favorite, but there was something about Midnight Mass that just hit me different than almost anything else. I thought Midnight Mass was brilliant. And maybe it was all just Hamish Linklater. I don't know. That guy was incredible. How he didn't even get an award nod, I don't understand.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people saying that Bruce Greenwood and um, Mary McDonald ought to get a nod for this too. They were great. So we'll see.
I'm so embarrassed to ask this. Is there a supernatural element to this or no?
Yo, yeah, big time,
Oh yeah.
big time,
Yes. Okay, good. Then I'm
big time.
okay.
Yeah,
It
and it starts
started to
off.
sound succession-ish, like the way you were describing it. So I was like, okay.
No, the way to me, as a matter of fact, it opens up at the funeral, and the first thing he does is turn around and see something up in the balcony of the church, and other people turn around, they don't see it. Like
Okay,
there's
cool.
something up there, and then he sees his kids, and like, yeah, there's definitely 100% supernatural element to this.
Yeah.
Um, not in your face,
Yeah. No,
like
that's
it
the best part.
definitely.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a little less Succession, because like in Succession, everybody's trying to steal the company, and there's a lot of infighting and all that stuff. The kids don't all necessarily like each other, but nobody is really trying to take the company away. He's in full control the whole time, um, and so that's never really an issue. They are the stupid kids, right? Like they're all dumbasses, but they're not. Uh, it's not quite the same infighting as Succession, but I can see the feel there. I mean, it's definitely around the business. But the way that it bounces between time kind of takes that edge off too, because you see them kind of coming up in their origin story, because they are both, when they were kids, they were bastards. Their mom um, had an affair with the guy that ran the company that they take over, and so they're actually his kids, but he won't acknowledge them, and they're not allowed to go over to his house, even though he doesn't live very far away, and it really kind of sets up the longer story arc and things. And yeah, it's just a trip. It's dope.
So one thing I forgot to mention, I think we've talked about things before, is I would love to actually share in these last few minutes the fact that I actually saw a musical that I liked. So, I mean, I mean, if you know me, you know that I'm not like, oh my God, I gotta see this musical. Like, it's not me, right? But I've actually seen a fair bunch. Like, okay, I did see Hamilton, but it wasn't in person, but I don't care. I can't. I saw that on Disney, but I've seen
Yeah.
like Miss Saigon was my first one. I
Oh,
saw
Miss Saigon's
Billy
amazing.
Elliot. I saw Kinky Boots. I saw Wicked. I'm forgetting ones, but like I've definitely seen my share of musicals. So I was in San Francisco, Bay Area last weekend, and I, I'm booed up. Hey, yay. No, but like, so my boo, she suggested we go see this musical called the Hippest Trip, the Soul Train musical, because Soul Train was a hippest trip in America.
Mhm.
And so we went and we saw it at the ACT Theater in San Francisco. And I went in with like very just, I'm like, oh, it's a musical, whatever, cool, right? No, dude, it was awesome. Like I was so blown away. Basically, the story is really about like Don Cornelius, who was the creator of Soul Train. It starts off with him as a newscaster in 1968, and he's reporting on like the MLK assassination and then like the riots that happened afterwards. And then he's like, "This sucks." Like he's out in Chicago, that's where he was from, and he's like, "I want to tell positive Black stories. I want to be able to celebrate. I want to use my platform for celebration." So let's do a dance show, you know? So he started it in Chicago, and then it actually was able to get traction. People were into it. And it was really cool to hear that like Gladys Knight and the Pips were the actual first artists to perform on Soul Train just because she liked what he was trying to do. And it just showed how it rose from like, and then getting his first sponsors and then moving to LA, and then Dick Clark seeing that shit and going, "Oh yeah, fuck that." So they actually called it was Soul something. I forgot what it was called, but it wasn't called Soul Train, it was Soul something. But he actually made another show that was gonna compete against Soul Train. And eventually, like um Don was able to get all these like Black leaders to like they're gonna start a protest outside of his studios. So Dick Clark was like, "Yo, it's just capitalism, but I don't want to like have this like sully my reputation." So he actually pulled the plug on his own show and then just kept it moving. So that was cool to see that happen. And then you also see how Don handled the evolution of music, because he was all about soul. Then disco comes along, and at first it's like, are you going to like sell out and like let disco artists come on, you know? And then it actually progresses from like soul to disco to hip hop to then he actually talks about New Jack Swing. And that to me is like mentioning Attack on Titan and Teenage Mutant, because I was New Jack Swing man. Like my name's Andrew fucking Knight. Like people know what fuck I am. Sorry. But like I have a website called njsforever.com, and that was a New Jack Swing site. So to actually have like the genre that I evangelized back in like 2000, whatever, like actually acknowledge and having like Bobby Brown, like, you know, at My Prerogative, and like it was crazy. So it was just like, it wasn't just like your typical musical. I will say that there's a dark side. Like Don Cornelius was not a nice guy. Like he was kind of like super um Machiavellian is too strong of a word, but like definitely I would say hardcore INTJ, like just was all about business and did not care about like the touchy feelies, not really. Kind of absent to his kids. He had two kids and his wife. Um, but it just told a good story, and his life didn't end well. By the way, he actually he died by suicide. But I think that what's great about the musical is that not only is it a really great celebration of like the music itself and what it meant to American culture, because it was, yes, it was a Black origin, but it was very inclusive. Everyone's invited to this party, but it also kind of was a better epilogue for Don, because when I remember hearing about Don, he got into a domestic dispute with his new wife, and then he kills himself. I'm like, yo, what's up with that? Like, why are all these legends, whether it's like MJ or like Bill Cosby or now Don Cornelius, like why are they ending their legacies in a way that is not the best, you know? But I think, and his son, by the way, I'm rambling now, but I hope people are liking this. His son um is in the play. Like his son, like he had two sons. One son was like, F you, dad. The other son was like, I want to be like you, dad. So the other son's like literally trying to get his love, trying to like, you know, gopher at the show, trying to like run the show. And his dad's like, you're not ready, son. Like, this is my shit. Like, I'm going to the grave with this. I'm taking this with me, you know? And it was all about the father-son dynamic. Anyway, this son who's in the play, in the musical, actually is an executive producer. So to me, that's got to be super just emotional and cathartic to do this for the show and for your dad's legacy, and you're still there to see it. So last but not least, it's going to be opening on Broadway. I think San Francisco just got it first for some reason, which is really cool. Like this is their test run. But I was blown away, and I know that you said Porgy and Bess, and a couple others might be good along those lines too. But I think what I really gravitated to was I lived it. Like I remember watching Soul Train on Saturday afternoons in Canada, because we had CBS Detroit. CBS Maine didn't have that shit, but CBS Detroit did. So I was so happy I got CBS Detroit, and it just it was just so cool. It was cool. So anyway, I saw that, and I hope that when it opens in New York, it actually gets the love that like a Hamilton did, because I think it deserves it. And the dancing, I didn't talk about the dancing. The dancing was amazing. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, the one that I recommended, it's not out right now, and I would say I wouldn't start with the soundtrack. I would wait for it to come out and go watch it. Is Ragtime,
Ragtime. Okay.
and in one of the reasons that one came out, I want to say it was 95 or 96. No, it was a little later than that. But it came out the same year as the Lion King musical, and Lion King swept the Tonys because it was a spectacle and it was big. Ragtime was the better show. Ragtime should have won Best Musical that year. Now it is the story of literally the turn of the century. So it goes from it starts like 1900, and there's three, effectively three storylines. You have the rich white folks in New York. You have the black folks that worked for the rich white folks in New York, and then you had the like Eastern Bloc immigrants coming over into New York. So you had this meshing of society in New York, and it's all about the melting pot and how everything changed at the turn of the century. And racism was a thing. Like all of these things that um, you know haven't been told in the same way in musicals or in stories later in the century are told there. And a lot of it is, yes, these people came over, these Jewish immigrants came over from Eastern Europe, but they were maybe not treated as poorly as black people were at the time, but they weren't treated well, right? Like they were also the lower caste citizens, but they came over believing in the American dream. Like they were running from Europe to come over and make it. Like they all thought they were going to come and life was going to be great. And they got here and they were living in tenement slums and all that, right? So their life sucked. And so you have the rich white people who, for a lot of in a lot of cases, didn't even understand that this other stuff was going on. Like their worlds were so segregated. So the way that one of the early scenes of the show is this rich white woman finds a black servant girl from down the road literally burying her own baby because she was afraid she would get fired and lose her job for having a child. And this white woman takes her in and takes her baby in. And then the man that finds it that's the father finds out, and he comes, and it's the story of him trying to be accepted by this rich white family. And the way that all the stories intertwine, it's based on a book called Ragtime. And the book definitely has more details. There's details in the book that are left out of the musical because you only have 3 hours to tell a story. But the music in it is phenomenal. When it came out, it was, I think, the largest black cast in Broadway, at least at the time, and if not in history, because it's a huge show. Like just the cast overall is huge. But this is pre-Hamilton. This is pre everything else. It was hard for black actors in musicals at the time, and so this was kind of revolutionary in its own way. And now, granted, Lion King came out that same year, and they leaned heavy into the African content in Lion King. So if you watch the Lion King movie, the Lion King musical, they hired actual African composers to come in and redo the music. So it is much more African than the Lion King, the movie. And they definitely did cast more black actors than they had. Like, they made sure that the parrot Zazu was played by a black actor. Like I think they tried pretty hard to make the entire show black actors, whereas in The Lion King, obviously you had Matthew Broderick playing Simba and Jonathan Taylor Thomas and all that. And so like this was this era of of opening up theater or musical theater in a way that hadn't been opened up. But Ragtime, um, the music is amazing, especially if you listen to the soundtrack. So if you watch the musical and enjoy it, get the soundtrack, because the guy that plays Coalhouse, he's been around, and his name is escaping me right now, but he is fucking amazing. Like his voice is incredible. And then the girl that plays his girlfriend Sarah, she is a big deal. And her voice, Audra McDonald, her voice is, I mean, the two of them together, like they have a couple of songs that they sing together and just unreal. But it's a great show just because of the drama of it and the story that it's telling, and how these three worlds, effectively collided. Some of it's fictionalized, like there's a whole um, part where they're going to blow up the Gutenberg Museum and the Gutenberg Bible and stuff like that. But um, it's all for a reason, and it plays out really well. And it, near the end, you have Booker T. Washington in there, and a bunch of these like actual
Historical figures.
yeah, historical figures that come into the story. It's a great story. So I would say even if you don't want to watch the musical, read the book. But the musical is pretty great. Now the difference is, and this is obviously harder to find, and why this one probably resonated more that you just saw, is that most things aren't built around modern music, right? The late '90s at least was a resurgence of kind of new music. So the music felt more, more modern than something like Oklahoma or stuff like that, that all felt old. Although if you saw Miss Saigon, that's one of my favorite musicals. That one's sad and heartbreaking, but the music is incredible. And if you saw the original cast, Lea Salonga is incredible.
As a matter of
Uh,
fact, I think they did. It was my girlfriend at the time. It's always a girl. I think, no, it was 2000. That was my first trip to New York. And honestly, all I remember was the helicopter scene when they're like leaving the fall
mhm.
sign. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was her. And I think she was also in something else, right? Wasn't she from?
She's the voice of Mulan, and she was also
Yes.
one of the main characters in Les Mis. Because Les
Okay.
Mis and Miss Saigon are written by the same folks, and you can
Got it.
tell like the music feels very similar. Um, but it's beautiful. Like the music is great. Miss Saigon is a sad fucking story. Like it is a
Yeah, like,
heartbreaking story.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
was a different guy back then.
yeah, yeah. It's incredible, but it is a heartbreaking story. I mean, it's about Vietnam. It's a heartbreaking story. Like no, nobody goes to Vietnam and is like, dude, let me tell you about this great time I had fighting in Vietnam, you know? And and same with Les Mis. Like Les Mis isn't really a happy story either. Um, but her voice is ridiculous. She's amazing. Um, but yeah, that's like I said, right? Ragtime would be my recommendation for something that I don't know hits harder than, and it has a little more meaning than a lot of other stuff out there. Like I can give you a laundry list of musicals that I love,
Yeah.
um,
No, but the
but
depth,
I don't know that they're gonna
yeah.
have an effect the way that Ragtime would, because of the story that it's telling. And just the historical aspect of it, I think, is what makes that one so interesting. Um, yeah. So, like I said, I can give you a laundry list. I've got a lot that I love, but that one has always been special to me. I think also because I felt like it was such a big snub in the year that it was out in the
What you
tones.
should do, is I loved your Star Wars scroll, like when we were talking about like how to become a dictator. So maybe like as you're talking or editing, just up to you. You do a scroll of like, a Star Wars scroll of like the best musical that people should watch, So that way, if you're listening to the podcast now, if you watch the podcast on YouTube, then you'll get
You
those
get a
things that
little
you want
bonus.
in. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
I might throw them in there. And to be fair, I'm out of the loop. I haven't seen anything new in the last, like, I don't know, 15 years or more.
Yeah.
Um, but Wicked is probably the newest thing that I've seen in person. I
Rent. I saw Rent. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Rent is awesome.
Yeah.
Um, But
Book of Mormon. I
oh, see, I
totally
haven't
forget
seen that.
anything.
I've always wanted to see the Book of Mormon. I
Yeah.
haven't seen that one yet. Um, but yeah, I haven't seen too much of the new one. Like I said, Wicked is Wicked's good. I saw that with my daughter last year before, and we really enjoyed it. Like it's a very fun and interesting musical. It's a great take on the Wizard of Oz. Um, prequel to the Wizard of Oz actually, but um, yeah, I'm out of the loop. There's a lot of great stuff that's out there right now, and I know there is, and I haven't listened to it. My son just told me about a new one coming out. I think it's called Epic, and it's about the Homer's Odyssey.
Hmm.
So he said he's heard some of it. It sounds great. So I've
Saw
got to give
King
that one a shot.
Kong. I saw King Kong too. That was funny. Because I legitimately was like, okay, like it only ran for like a season. Like it was like, okay, it's going away. And I think it actually happened, I want to say 2020. No, it was 2019. Yeah, it was 2019 because yeah, it was 2019. It was like June of 2019. And I think I was gonna like leave New York at that point, but I didn't. But I remember just going to see it literally, I think the second last night. But they still they weren't performing like they were depressed or anything. Like they still gave it their
Oh
all.
yeah.
It was this big animatronic hand and a big head. Like it was cool. Like I felt like, yeah.
Well,
It's
that
like
was one that I talked about in our chat. That is visually cool. Is
yeah.
Titanic the musical? Like when you say it, people are like, "What?" But I think it won some awards. But what makes it cool is that the whole first act is up until the iceberg hits. The second half is all about everybody dealing with sinking, but they built the stage so it slowly tilts. So as the ship is sinking, the whole stage is moving, and it's not fast. I mean, it's
Yeah.
over the course of like an hour.
Yeah.
Um,
That's gotta be a trip.
but it was really cool to see. Um, and that one, in a lot of ways, has a lot of factual accuracy that's missing from Titanic the movie, even though Cameron put a phenomenal amount of detail into Titanic. I think they almost kind of supplement each other really well, just because you get some stories that you don't get, from one or the other. If you're a Titanic fan,
I am.
um, so that one's interesting. I also love Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde doesn't sound like a musical that would have been made, but it was a great musical. Especially the soundtrack. The main character has been played by the guy that did in the original soundtrack is Robert Cuccioli, and he's insanely talented. David Hasselhoff has played the part.
Oh,
Less impressive. Um, not Axl Rose. What's the dude's name from? Uh,
from Van Halen.
no, a hair band,
Oh, 18 and Life Skid Row.
maybe.
Okay, that guy's
Dude,
name
I
is
can picture the
something
dude.
Van Bach or
Sebastian
something.
Bach.
Sebastian
Sebastian
Bach.
Bach.
Yeah. Yes.
He
You,
he
yeah.
did it. He was okay. He was okay. But that one's cool. Like that one, it's an interesting story to see made because it's dark. Like it really is um, and I love that musical. There's a couple of songs in there that I really enjoy. Hamilton, I survived 3 hour commutes just bumping the Hamilton soundtrack and singing along because when you're stuck in traffic for that long, you need something. Um, and
3 hours? God
we,
damn.
yeah, because I would go from Sunnyvale to Tracy at rush hour. It's stupid. It's stupid. California traffic is stupid. I I love living out here now in Connecticut. People are like, "Oh, traffic," and I'm like, "Nope."
Oh.
I was like, "Don't even." Nope. Like you have no idea what you're talking about. So,
Speaking of traffic, Avenue Q. I saw that one as well. That's an old
uh,
school one.
yeah,
Yeah. See what I did there, by the way? I thought it was pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. Avenue Q is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, cool. All right. Well, yeah, I don't have anything else. I don't know. Do you
Dude, we just almost made 2 hours, so it's gonna be a nice, decently long
yeah,
episode. So I think we pulled it off. We pulled.
nice. All right, then. Well, with that, I will say to everybody watching or listening, thank you for being a part of this week's show. I actually totally forgot I will not be around next week. So if you feel like grabbing somebody and recording an episode and shooting it over to me, I can edit it up and stuff. But I won't be here next week. My daughter's in town, and there's not a lot of things that I put before the show, but I will always put her before the show. She kind of kicks ass. So um, we're not even doing anything important, but my office will be her bedroom. So when we usually record, she'll be asleep. So she, like I said, she wins for a week, and then I'll be back the following week, probably with more Loki. That will be we'll be recording just before Halloween, so I'm sure I'll squeeze in some more horror films and some stuff in there, and we'll go from there. So with that, again, thank you for watching or listening, and we will talk to you next time.
I've been watching the Vehicle Voltron now on Amazon. You can buy. I sprung eyes. You know what, Andrew? There's no more when I grow up. I am grown up, so I just went ahead and sprung for both seasons. I think they're like $30 each. It was worth it.
We got it on YouTube for free, so just watching it with commercials on YouTube.
Is it Lion and Vehicle or just Lion?
Yeah, started with the Lion series, and then Vehicle series is next.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we're watching that, and then we're watching at the same time with my older son, because me and my youngest are watching the original. And me and my youngest and my oldest are watching the newest anime iteration on Netflix.
Yeah.
In the evenings, and so we're into the third season of that one.
Legendary Defender.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's okay. I mean, it's very modern anime. Right, like all the things that if you're looking for something that you don't like in modern anime, it's definitely there, right?
Yeah,
like it's cheesier in parts. It's still good. Like it definitely like parts of the story are more adult than the original, but there's also parts that are cornier.
Yeah, I mean, like. I do applaud your abilities to, I think get with the times when it comes to certain things. I think I'm pretty stubborn because even like the music for me was iconic. That for me, like to not have that is just for me personally a big miss.
I agree with for sure. I think that stuff needs to be there or should be there, and it's not.
So for me, like Legendary Defender went on, like you said, for 3 seasons. So it definitely has a legit fan base that needs to be respected. So if I were like making a movie, I would definitely lean on the original, but I would make sure to nod to Defender. And maybe like for example, I know Sven, like he just fucking dies in like the original, but I think and he probably dies in Defender too. I don't know. But
no, he doesn't die in the original. He gets they lose him. He basically becomes a prisoner of war. Right. They think he's dead, and then he comes back with Allura's cousin or whatever the hell she is that it sounds exactly like her.
Yeah, no. So in the original anime, he's dead. Like that's his brother. But yeah, you're right. In Voltron continuity, he's alive, but he even looks different, like slightly. So I knew he's like
a little bit, yeah.
I'm a madman. I'm like, of course you're a madman because you want revenge for Hagar killing your brother. So
yeah,
that makes sense. Romel, Princess Romel.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I still want to find the original Go Lion and watch that and just see how different that is. Because I know that it is different. But I don't know.
Allura thing. Do you know? Can you guess why he's so into Allura? In the original? Should I tell you?
Yeah.
she looks like his mom, dude. It's fucking Oedipus. So those
Nice.
like fucking like scenes where it's like a nightmare or whatever, where it's like some like allure looking person and Zarkon's like trying to talk to her and it's like, no, she's mine. Yeah, no, dude, that was him like remembering like Zarkon like taking his mom. Like that's why like
Hmm.
so yeah, he's in love with Allure because she looks like his mom. It's sick.
All right.
And there's more to Hagar too. Like if I mean I can
Hmm.
tell you. Do you want to know? I won't say anything.
No, that's all right. You can spoil it. I'll forget by the time I watch it, anyways.
Hagar is fucking his grandma. So Hagar is Zarkon's mother
Okay.
in the original anime. That is nuts. And that's not even revealed even in the anime until the end. And it's like crazy. So yeah.
Yeah, I really want to check it out too because yeah, the American version is very kiddish, and it it's really cheesy in parts, and like the longer you watch it, the more you're like, it's the same thing over and over and over again. At least the new one is an ongoing story. So
Yeah.
from a storytelling standpoint, the new one is definitely better. The original, um, like you said, is a little more iconic for sure. The music, even the look, and I don't mind the look of the new one, but there's something about that original design that worked, and maybe it's because it was based on a toy. I don't know which came first, the toy or the cartoon in that case. I don't know if it's the same as Transformers, where the Transformers were first and
Yeah.
or the toys were first, but I had that big ass die cast Voltron.
Props, man.
Um,
That was my holy grail. My
I
holy
I
grail.
wish I still had it. I wish I still had it. And I was a dummy. I should have bought the Lego Voltron when they put it out last year. There's a full-on Lego Voltron that came apart into the lions, and you could put them together as Voltron. And I didn't. It was only like $130. It wasn't that much, and now it's like $400 if you can find it. So I was like, man, damn it. So, but
Word.
yeah, it was good. And so yeah, so we're enjoying that show. Like it's fine. Um, the new one is it's good. If it would get rid of like the random just little things that keep it cheesy, it would be closer to a better anime. The art doesn't really bother me for the most part. Um, and the voice actors are all solid. They have a few like actual names in there. I know
Okay.
Tyler Labine is in there. He plays Hunk, and he is from all kinds of stuff. He was recently on the show New Amsterdam, but he's been around in a bunch of stuff. I think I might be getting him mixed up. I was going to say he might have been in one of the Mighty Ducks movies back in the day, but I might be thinking of somebody else there. But he's been around for a long time, and a few of the other voice actors are recognizable too. So it's a good cast. Like I said, it's well done, well made. It got 8 seasons, which is crazy to me.
8.
Uh, yeah,
Damn, dude. How many
yeah.
episodes a season?
Oh, I don't know because I think it ends at 76, and that's not quite a round number. So I don't know where the extra episodes are.
Wow,
Um,
76 episodes? Are you talking
yeah,
about the
yeah,
Legendary Defender? Damn,
yeah.
dude. Well, I also know at I think the last episode of the Legendary Defender, like show have you finished it already? Because I
Mm-mm.
don't I'm not saying anything. All right, nothing. Nothing.
Yeah,
All
we're
right.
all, we're in the partway into the third season, I think.
Okay.
Because Lotor just showed up.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm loving like I did not like Vehicle of Ultron when I was a kid. I thought it was lame. I was expecting more of Lion and it's like, what is this? And then every time and my brothers liked Vehicle of Ultron and I'm like, no, Lion all the way. And every time they'd be in fights, I'd be like, if the Lions are here, they just wreck shop. Like these little, but now like Vehicle of Ultron strikes me as just a more mature story and like the idea of like they're looking for planets to settle because Earth is overcrowded and the Drool's whole planet is like dying, so they're fighting for like worlds. That to me is cool, and I even
mhm.
learned words like negotiation from Vehicle Voltron, and there's dying. Like I mean,
Yeah.
it feels like proto Robotech, and that's why I like it. So
Yeah, it's weird to say, but I do prefer an anime where people can die. Like it's a little dark, it's a little, messed up to say, but it just feels more like it should have actual stakes. And that, when they can die in it, I think that, and part of that's being an adult, like I told you, I'm doing a rewatch during the day, the work day when I have time, and in the mornings when I have time of Attack
AOT
on Titan because I'm getting ready because that's pretty soon, right?
November 4th or 5th, I want to say.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah.
got to get there, um, and so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully, I'll finish in time.